What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rant Review Gaming. We're doing a quick post-mortem of the horror game, The Quarry, which we just wrapped up our Let's Play of this past week. It was a blind playthrough. If you do want to check it out, of course, you can always subscribe to the channel and check out that Let's Play. It's up on here and also on my Twitch channel. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on the game after playing it. Overall, I thought the game was fun. Of all of the Dark Pictures, Supermassive, super whatever this group of horror games is called, they're all kind of these cinematic, play along, choose your own adventure kind of games. This is the one that I think is the most replayable. It has the least complicated quick time events, although I would suggest not using the D-pad or the analog stick to do the quick time events. Use the D-pad because, as you may see in my playthrough and some other playthroughs you might see on Twitch and on YouTube, sometimes your finger or thumb can slip on that analog stick, and you might wind up screwing up a QuickTime event that way. It's easier to use the directional pad. But other than that, like, it doesn't have those kind of quick gotcha ones that, were in The Man of Medan, definitely, in Until Dawn. With some of the ones that were just like kind of cheap that you're like, oh, come on, I couldn't have gotten that one. So they didn't have a lot of those in this one. It really is kind of a play along and watch a movie and interact with it here and there kind of a game. As in most of the other games, there is kind of a curator or a person, a host. They're a crypt keeper, as it were, in between the different chapters of the game. In this game, they take a little different turn with it, whereas in the other ones, that character really isn't kind of a participant in the game, isn't kind of related to what's going on in the game. In the Dark Pictures anthology, it's just kind of the curator who's just like, he's got all these books and he's introducing you to all these stories. The Until Dawn one was the psychologist. In this one, turns out, again, spoilers for this, and you should know that there's spoilers from the title of this video, but this is the Haggett of Hackett's Quarry, the ghost, and we come to find out by the end of the game that she was a fortune teller and running this traveling vaudeville kind of carnival circus thing. Her own son was inflicted with a werewolf curse. We don't know where it came from. We never get the answers to that. But Silas, the wolf boy, was an actual werewolf, her son. And we find out how the Hacketts are involved with this and how the camp is involved with this and how that all ties together. And they lay little bits and pieces of the storyline throughout each of the chapters. I think there are 10 chapters in the game. And little by little, you get to see how it all fits together, which I think they did very well in the game, including, again, your host, the witch that is, or I guess she's not a witch, she's a fortune teller. They do call her a witch at one point. The fortune teller who's reading all of the fortunes, or the fortune cards that you're finding. Now, the tarot cards that you find throughout the forest are like the other games where you had the totems in one game and all different little findable items in all of these games that, if you collect them, they will hint at the possible future, kind of a thing for you to be aware of for the quick time events that'll be coming up in the future games, so you kind of get a hint as to what to do in order to keep your characters alive. I think the graphics in this one are excellent. Some of the facial animations are a little weird. There was this weird thing, especially with the females and their hair jumping around, especially with Caitlin, Abigail in particular. Their hair jumped around a lot. Like, I don't know what was up with the physics with that. Some of the water physics were a little weird looking, but overall, most of the animations are getting better. They're very realistic and photorealistic in that sense. I think the creatures, the werewolves, it's kind of the same take they've had on a lot of the other monsters. They're kind of humanoid, elongated limbs, jagged teeth. It's kind of the same, kind of very similar to the creatures in the Until Dawn game. It's kind of the same kind of a thing. They're werewolves, but they're not very hairy. They're not very wolf-like. There's some wolf qualities, but they keep it kind of human. But they look fine. They were very vicious and very scary. When you do encounter a werewolf, it is a terrifying experience when you're playing the game, because you're hoping that you can survive it and you can do the right actions in order to keep your characters from dying. As far as the characters themselves, this is where the game kind of falls apart, and most of these do fall apart. Now, the trope is with all of these horror games, or like a lot of the 80s and 90s horror movies, where the teenagers are just obnoxious and unlikable, and they're meant to be obnoxious and unlikable. But in this game, it really kind of goes far. And I think the reason why it stands out a little bit more in this game is, unlike Man of Medan or The House of Ashes or even Until Dawn, there is no part of this game where any of these characters who have, start off with these backstories or relationships, where any of those relationships seem to be resolved in any way, where any of the characters kind of have any growth, or there's an arc or something, or there's a moment where something that plagues the character at the beginning of the game, we find out about them, they kind of have their moment where that comes into play in the story. There's really none of that in this game. The worst examples of this are the core vapid couple, who aren't even really a couple, of Emma and Jacob. And Emma and Jacob, you could do a whole video about what's wrong with that. Jacob is and I hate using these terms, but this is what the people made this game wanted it to be. Jacob is a wannabe alpha male jock, overcompensating white guy who thinks he's the leader, and he's always party, da da da. It's a stereotype of stereotypes. And he's had the summer fling with Emma, who's the very attractive social media influencer. But the summer's over. She said it's a summer fling. She broke up with him. He didn't want to accept it. It's all of his fault that they wind up getting stuck there an extra night. And that's when all hell breaks loose. So the whole thing is his fault. But even deeper than that, he's a stage 5 clinger, and Emma is a manipulator and uses people. The interesting thing about it is I've seen other Let's Plays of the game and how all the different ways you can conclude their storyline. And most of the time, either Jacob's going to be left alone in the woods, or he's going to die some gruesome death in a very ironic way that's pretty bad. And he always winds up apologizing. He's either going to be apologizing, or he's just going to be a clueless dumbass. And then with Emma, though, it doesn't seem that she ever feels bad for anything that she does. And, they kind of even, and maybe this is a moral change in pop culture these days, but there's a whole scene that kind of sparks the second half of the game where there's truth or dare, and Emma is dared to kiss either Jacob, the guy she was dating, the super clingy guy, or Nick, who Nick is the guy that Emma's best friend Abigail has a crush on. So Emma decides she's going to go ahead and just basically tongue kiss Nick in front of her friend. Remember, this is the guy her best friend likes, and in front of this stage 5 clinger that she knows is unstable, Jacob, who then of course starts flipping out when it happens. And then that pisses everybody off, and then everybody wanders off, and that's when everything starts going to hell. So between Jacob and Emma, they kind of ruin everything in the game. But Emma's character never feels bad about anything she does. In fact, she kind of whines at one, depending on your dialogue options and what you choose in the game. She starts whining at one point about having to be concerned about other people's feelings. By the way, there is a way you can get Emma and Jacob to have a real drag down, nasty fight. I've seen that version online, and it's pretty bad. And again, Emma's does nothing wrong, and Jacob is a complete jackass. So now those characters are the worst. The best characters, I would say Laura Kearney, who's played by Siobhan Williams, who's kind of like the lead female in the game. And I would say Ryan, played by Justice Smith, he's really the lead male in the game. They're not as annoying, although Ryan does have this tendency to do this very childish "I'm not stupid, you're stupid" thing several times in the game.
Okay, fuck you, man. I'm trying to help.
No, fuck you. I'm trying to help.
You can't hide from me in my own house, fucker!
You're a fucker.
But what am I?
I know you are, but what am I? Infinity.
No, I'm not. You are. No way.
Laura at the beginning does act a bit like an airhead, but she very quickly gets over that as she realizes what she has to do to lift the curse of Hackett's Quarry, to lift the curse on her real boyfriend Max, even though she seems to start taking to Ryan later on. But Ryan is in the middle of this kind of triangle with Dylan, and Caitlyn that never really goes anywhere. But if you're not playing Ryan to be interested in Dylan romantically, Dylan just kind of comes off as a creeper every time. He's just always dropping hints towards Ryan over and over again. It kind of feels a little weird. I don't know. It's a little regressive, I guess, for that kind of a character. Maybe not. I don't know. I just kind of felt that way when I listening to that character. I mean, even Caitlyn kind of hints. She really isn't really doing much of anything. And which is the other thing with the characters. They're all one-dimensional. The dialogue sometimes is just obnoxious as hell. I mean, some of these conversations are just so extra. And including the podcast. The closing credits are terrible. The podcast, I'll get to that in a bit, but there's this podcast that's hinted at throughout the show, and it actually plays through the end credits, where you get the full-on terribleness of of the dialogue written in. I don't know if the people that wrote this game, if they are like this, or they know a lot of people who are this obnoxious, but it's like Ghostbusters 2016 levels of just unnecessarily over the top, just BS obnoxious.
Just like make it sound urgent.
Okay.
Hello, how's it going out there? This is, we need help. This is, we are counselors at Hackett's Quarry Summer Camp everywhere, and there's these hunters too, and they seem to be shooting at the bears, but also at us. Save our ship. Come on down, please help us.
The only number I got is to this phone.
Okay, then 911.
You mean 911? Who says 911? Help! Help! My friends may have been attacked by bears, but maybe not a bear, but definitely an animal with teeth. And then one of them was kidnapped by these hunter guys with blood on their faces, and there may have been shots fired, but not by us, but also...
Okay, so I hope you've got hat insurance, Anton, because I'm about to blow your mind.
Did you just ask if I had hat insurance?
Yes, it's responsible to insure those things which mean the most to you. You'd say that.
Oh God, why? Why are you smiling? Stop it, I hate it.
Why? I had braces. I have to make use of them sometimes.
You do have very pretty teeth.
Thank you. That's something that a lot of podcast listeners might not know about me.
Shut up!
As for the horror aspects of the game, there weren't a lot of really gross kills. Most of the really gross kills came from shotgun wounds, ironically. The werewolves are intense and terrifying. You do want to get away from them. That part was really cool. At the end of the game, if you collect enough evidence and you've cured everybody or haven't cured everybody, it depends on how you play the game. There are multiple different endings. But as I mentioned before, there's a podcast that's hinted at during the course of the game. At the end of the game, the results of all your findings and who you saved and who you didn't save, who lived and who didn't live, whether or not you resolved the curse or didn't resolve the curse, you helped out the hag or didn't help out the hag, all will determine on what the podcasters report happened at Hackett's Quarry. And if you can sit through their vapid back and forth nonsensical BS banter, then you can find out that the ending changes depending on very slight things, which is kind of cool. It's just unfortunate you have to sit through these obnoxious people talking to get to that. Overall, it was a fun experience. I definitely will play it again. I definitely suggest you playing it if you like these kind of games. And if you're a person who's not really into like being a big gamer, but you're kind of interested in an interactive horror game, this is definitely one for your casual gamer friends or people who probably aren't even gamers but will probably like something like this. But I want to know what you guys thought about The Quarry. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until then, I will see you guys here as we continue our Let's Plays and reviews here of the gaming world on the Rant and Review Gaming. Have a good day.